I'm Jessica Martinez, 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago I walked out of my sister's wedding after she introduced me to her new in-laws as just the hired help in front of 150 guests. What she didn't know was that the caterer had been watching everything unfold, and the phone call I received from them 2 hours later would completely flip the script on who was really successful in our family. My sister Stephanie thought she was putting me in my place, but what happened next proved that sometimes karma comes with a side of perfectly prepared hors d'oeuvres and a business proposal that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in Scottsdale, Arizona meant living in a world where appearances mattered more than authenticity, especially in the Martinez household. Our modern Southwestern-style home sat perfectly manicured in a gated community called Desert Ridge Estates, where every house looked like it belonged in a luxury magazine spread. My father, Robert, had built Martinez Construction from the ground up, starting with small residential jobs and eventually landing contracts for upscale developments throughout the Phoenix area. My mother, Carmen, had parlayed her natural charm and bilingual skills into a thriving real estate career, specializing in high-end properties for both Anglo and Latino families looking to establish themselves in Arizona's booming market. From the outside, we were the perfect American success story, a hard-working immigrant family that had achieved the dream through determination and business acumen. Dad's construction trucks bearing the Martinez logo were scattered across job sites throughout the valley, while Mom's face smiled from real estate signs in some of Scottsdale's most exclusive neighborhoods. But inside our picture-perfect home with its terracotta tiles and soaring ceilings, a different story was unfolding. I was 7 when Stephanie was born, and I can still remember the exact moment our family dynamic shifted forever. While I had inherited Dad's practical nature and tendency toward introversion, Stephanie arrived as if she'd been specially designed to charm the world. She had these enormous dark eyes that seemed to sparkle with mischief and joy, combined with Mom's natural ease in social situations. Even as a toddler, she could work a room like a seasoned politician, switching effortlessly between English and Spanish depending on who was paying attention to her. The contrast between us became more pronounced as we grew older. I was the serious one, always reading in corners or sketching in notebooks, fascinated by colors and fonts, and the way visual elements could tell stories without words. Stephanie was the performer, organizing elaborate tea parties for our dolls, putting on shows for visiting relatives, and somehow always managing to be the center of attention wherever we went. When family friends visited, they would inevitably gravitate toward Stephanie's animated storytelling while I quietly observed from the sidelines. Our parents, perhaps without realizing it, began assigning us roles that would define our relationship for decades. Stephanie became the family's ambassador to the world, the daughter who could be counted on to charm clients at company barbecues or impress other parents at school events. I became the reliable one, expected to help with homework, handle responsibilities, and generally fade into the background while Stephanie shined. The pattern became most obvious during family gatherings at Grandpa Eddie's house across town. My maternal grandfather had been a mechanic his entire life, working with his hands and building a modest but comfortable retirement in a neighborhood that gentrification hadn't yet discovered. Unlike my parents, who measured success in square footage and property values, Grandpa Eddie valued different things. He would spend hours teaching me how to use his old drafting tools, showing me how precision and creativity could work together to build something beautiful and functional. While Stephanie entertained the adults with her latest dance routine or school achievement, Grandpa Eddie and I would sit at his kitchen table working on small projects. He taught me lettering techniques, showed me how to see the geometric patterns in everyday objects, and listened with genuine interest when I explained my ideas for designs I'd been working on. Those quiet afternoons became my refuge, the place where I felt truly seen and valued for who I was, rather than how well I performed. School reinforced these family dynamics in ways that were sometimes subtle and sometimes painfully obvious. Stephanie excelled in subjects that required presentation and social interaction. She was student council president, head of the drama club, and somehow managed to be popular without being mean to anyone. Teachers loved her because she brought energy and enthusiasm to every classroom. I meanwhile gravitated toward art classes and computer labs, spending lunch periods working on design projects or helping teachers create posters for school events. When Stephanie was in 8th grade and I was a junior in high school, our different paths became impossible to ignore. She was chosen to represent our school in a regional leadership conference, an honor that came with a ceremony where parents, grandparents, and siblings were invited to celebrate. I had spent weeks working on a portfolio for a statewide art competition, and the deadline for submission fell on the same day as Stephanie's ceremony. When I mentioned the conflict to my parents, hoping they might help me figure out how to manage both events, their response was immediate and telling. Mom barely looked up from her laptop where she was preparing a listing presentation. "Jess, you can submit your art project anytime," she said dismissively. "Your sister's ceremony is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We need to be there to support her." Dad nodded in agreement, already mentally shifting into proud parent mode for Stephanie's big day. Nobody asked what my art competition might mean to me, or whether it might also be important. The assumption was that Stephanie's achievements naturally took priority. I ended up submitting my portfolio via email minutes before the deadline, working frantically to scan and upload my pieces while my family prepared for Stephanie's celebration. Later that evening, as they recounted every detail of the ceremony and gushed over the praise Stephanie had received from community leaders, I sat quietly at the dinner table knowing that my work had been selected as a regional finalist. The email notification had arrived during Stephanie's event, but I kept the news to myself, understanding instinctively that it would be inappropriate to share my success during her moment. High school graduation brought these dynamics into sharp focus. I had been accepted to the Art Institute of Denver with a partial scholarship, achievement that represented years of dedicated work in creative development. Stephanie, still in middle school but already making plans for her future, was actively involved in planning every detail of my graduation party. She had developed a passion for event coordination, transforming even simple family gatherings into elaborate productions with themes, decorations, and carefully curated guest lists. The graduation party she organized was beautiful, themed around my college plans with decorations in the Art Institute's colors and a cake designed to look like an artist's palette. But somehow, the event became more about showcasing Stephanie's event planning skills than celebrating my educational achievement. Guests spent the evening complimenting her creativity and organizational abilities, while my acceptance letter and portfolio pieces sat largely unnoticed on a side table. During the toast, Dad spoke about how proud he was to have two such talented daughters, but his focus quickly shifted to Stephanie's potential in the hospitality industry. "We've got a future wedding planner in the family," he announced, raising his glass toward Stephanie, who beamed under the attention. "She's going to revolutionize how people celebrate their special moment." My scholarship and college plans rated a brief mention as something the family was also proud of, but clearly secondary to Stephanie's emerging talents. That fall, moving to Denver felt like stepping out of a shadow I hadn't fully realized was covering me. The Art Institute challenged me in ways I hadn't expected, pushing me to develop not just technical skills, but also confidence in my creative voice. My professors treated my ideas with respect, critiquing my work constructively while encouraging me to take risks and experiment with new approaches. For the first time in my life, I was valued for the very qualities that had made me feel invisible at home. My roommate Maya was a photography major from a small town in Wyoming, and she had the kind of straightforward honesty that I found refreshing after years of navigating family politics. When I showed her pictures from Stephanie's graduation party for me, she studied them carefully before asking, "Wait, whose graduation was this again?" Her question forced me to see the event through outside eyes, recognizing how thoroughly Stephanie had managed to center herself in my celebration. College also introduced me to Kevin Thompson, a business major who worked part-time at a local coffee shop near campus. Kevin had grown up in a working-class family in Colorado Springs, where achievements were celebrated simply but genuinely without competition or comparison. When I told him about my family dynamics, he listened with the kind of attention I wasn't used to receive. His response was simple but profound. "It sounds like your family doesn't really know who you are." As my relationship with Kevin developed, I began bringing him home for holidays and special occasions. My parents were polite but distant, clearly struggling to understand what I saw in someone who drove a beat-up Honda and worked in food service to pay for school. Stephanie, now in high school and fully coming into her own as the family's social coordinator, was more directly dismissive. She would make subtle comments about Kevin's appearance or background, always framed as concern for my well-being, but clearly designed to undermine my confidence in the relationship. The contrast became stark during family gatherings, where Kevin was present. While Grandpa Eddie would engage him in genuine conversations about his business studies and future plans, my parents would politely endure his presence, while clearly wishing I had chosen someone more impressive. Stephanie would position herself as the family's spokesperson, dominating conversations and ensuring that attention remained focused on her latest achievements or plans. During my junior year, Stephanie began seriously dating Brad Wellington, whose family owned several successful car dealerships throughout Arizona. Brad represented everything my parents valued: financial success, social connections, and the kind of polished confidence that opened doors in business and social circles. The contrast between how they welcomed Brad versus their barely concealed disappointment in Kevin was painful to witness. Family dinners became exercises in subtle humiliation. Mom would ask Brad about his business plans and family connections with genuine interest, while Kevin's responses to similar questions were met with polite nods and quick subject changes. Stephanie would guide conversations toward topics that highlighted Brad's advantages, while subtly emphasizing Kevin's limitations. When Kevin mentioned working extra hours to save money for a spring break trip, Stephanie would immediately counter with stories about Brad's family vacation home in Cabo, or his plans to expand the family business. The summer before my senior year, I landed an internship with a small marketing firm in Denver that specialized in helping local businesses develop their brand identity. The work was exactly what I had hoped to do after graduation, combining my design skills with real-world business application. I was assigned to work on a campaign for a family-owned restaurant chain that was expanding throughout Colorado, and my contributions helped them increase their customer base by 30% over 3 months. When I called home, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. During the shower, I had the opportunity to observe family dynamics from a new perspective. Extended family members and family friends consistently praised Stephanie's achievements and wedding plans while treating me politely but with less enthusiasm. Conversations about my life in Denver were brief and surface level, while discussions about Stephanie's business and wedding dominated social interactions throughout the weekend. The pattern was particularly evident during the gift opening portion of the shower, when guests shared advice and well wishes for Stephanie's future. Multiple people commented on her business acumen, her talent for organization, and her bright future in the hospitality industry. When attention briefly turned to me as the maid of honor, comments were generally supportive but focused more on my role in supporting Stephanie than on my own accomplishments or future plans. That evening, staying in my childhood bedroom that had been converted into a guest room with neutral decorating and few traces of my personal history, I called Kevin to process the complicated emotions the weekend had generated. He listened as I described, feeling simultaneously proud of Stephanie's achievements and frustrated by the continued family dynamic that positioned her as the star, while relegating me to a supporting role. Kevin's perspective was characteristically insightful and gentle. He reminded me that I had chosen to build a life that prioritized my own values and goals rather than family approval, and that this choice had led to genuine professional success and personal happiness. The family dynamics that made me uncomfortable were the same patterns that had motivated my decision to create independence in the first place. My discomfort was evidence that I had grown beyond these limitations rather than indication that something was wrong with my choices. The conversation helped me approach the remaining wedding activities with clearer boundaries and expectations. I could participate fully in celebrating Stephanie's happiness while protecting my own emotional well-being and not internalizing family dynamics that no longer served my growth. The wedding would be an opportunity to practice maintaining healthy relationships with family members, while staying grounded in my own sense of worth and accomplishment. Over the following months, As wedding planning intensified, I became increasingly skilled at navigating family interactions from this more detached but caring perspective. I could appreciate Stephanie's talents and celebrate her success without needing family validation for my own achievement. The emotional work of establishing this boundary was challenging but ultimately liberating, allowing me to engage with family while protecting the confidence and self-worth I had developed through my independent life in Denver. When Stephanie called 6 weeks before the wedding with a request that would test these newly established boundaries, I was better equipped to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. She needed help coordinating with several vendors the week before the wedding, including final menu tastings, floral arrangements, and venue setup logistics. The request would require me to take a full week off work and essentially serve as her unpaid assistant during the most critical phase of wedding preparation. My initial impulse was to agree immediately, driven by years of conditioning to prioritize Stephanie's needs over my own consideration. But Kevin encouraged me to think carefully about the professional and personal costs of such extensive time away from work, especially since I had already used significant vacation time for previous wedding events. His questions helped me recognize that the request, while presented as sisterly support, was actually asking me to provide professional event coordination services without compensation or recognition. When I responded to Stephanie's request with a modified proposal offering to help with specific tasks during a long weekend rather than taking a full week off work, her reaction revealed the extent to which she had come to expect my unconditional availability for her priorities. She was frustrated and somewhat hurt that I wasn't willing to make what she characterized as a small sacrifice for her most important life event. Her response included subtle implications that my reluctance demonstrated lack of family loyalty and insufficient appreciation for her special occasion. The exchange crystallized the ongoing challenge of maintaining healthy boundaries with family members who had become accustomed to my willingness to subordinate my own needs to their expectations. Stephanie's reaction wasn't necessarily malicious, but it reflected a family dynamic where my time, resources, and energy were treated as naturally available for other people's priorities. Establishing limits on this availability felt selfish to them but was actually essential for my emotional health and professional development. The weeks leading up to the wedding became an intensive course in boundary maintenance as various family members attempted to recruit my assistance for last-minute tasks and preparation. Mom called repeatedly with requests for help coordinating travel arrangements for out-of-town relatives, managing vendor communications, and handling logistical details that Stephanie was too busy to address personally. Each request was framed as urgent and essential, requiring immediate attention regardless of my work schedule or personal commitments. Dad's approach was more direct, suggesting that family occasions required everyone to step up and contribute whatever was needed to ensure success. His perspective reflected the values that had built his construction business, where projects succeeded through collective effort and personal sacrifice for shared goals. From his viewpoint, my reluctance to provide unlimited assistance for Stephanie's wedding represented a concerning shift away from family solidarity toward selfish individualism. The pressure was intense but also clarifying. I could see how thoroughly my family had internalized the expectation that my time and energy were resources available for their use, rather than assets I managed according to my own priorities and values. The wedding had become a test of family loyalty, with my willingness to sacrifice my own needs serving as evidence of my commitment to family relationships. Kevin's support during this period was invaluable. He helped me recognize that healthy family relationships required mutual respect for individual boundaries rather than unilateral sacrifice from some members for the benefit of others. His own family provided a contrasting model where special occasions were celebrated through shared effort that acknowledged everyone's limitations and respected individual circumstances. The final pre-wedding conversation with Stephanie established the framework for how I would participate in her celebration while maintaining my own emotional and professional boundaries. I committed to arriving 3 days before the wedding to help with final preparations, handling specific coordination tasks that aligned with my skills and availability. I would fulfill my maid of honor responsibilities completely while not serving as an unpaid event coordination assistant for activities beyond the traditional wedding party role. Stephanie's acceptance of these parameters was reluctant, but ultimately pragmatic. She recognized that my participation on my terms was preferable to my absence or resentful compliance with her original expectations. The compromise allowed us both to approach the wedding with clearer understanding of our respective roles and responsibilities. As I prepared to return to Arizona for Stephanie's wedding, I felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The event would be a test of my ability to maintain the emotional growth and boundary-setting skills I had developed during my years of independence. It would also be an opportunity to celebrate Stephanie's achievements and happiness, while staying grounded in my own sense of worth and accomplishment. The professional success I had achieved at Creative Solutions, the healthy relationship I had built with Kevin, and the confidence I had developed through making independent choices had prepared me for this challenge. I was returning to my family not as the accommodating daughter who automatically deferred to others' needs, but as an adult with my own priorities and values who could engage lovingly while maintaining appropriate limits. The wedding weekend would prove to be more significant than any of us anticipated, setting in motion events that would fundamentally alter family dynamics and reveal truths that had been carefully hidden beneath years of assumptions and expectations. But as I packed for the trip back to Scottsdale, I felt equipped to handle whatever challenges might arise while staying true to the person I had become during my years of growth and independence. The flight from Denver to Phoenix felt like traveling through time rather than just crossing state lines. As the plane descended over the familiar desert landscape of my childhood, I could see the sprawling developments that Dad's construction company had helped build over the years. The geometric patterns of swimming pools and red tile roofs stretched endlessly toward the mountains, a testament to Arizona's relentless growth and my family's role in shaping it. Kevin squeezed my hand as we collected our luggage, his presence providing the emotional anchor I needed to navigate the next few days. He had insisted on coming despite the expense and the awkwardness of attending a family wedding where he wasn't entirely welcome. His steady support had become so integral to my sense of stability that facing my family without him felt unnecessarily challenging. Mom picked us up at the airport in her pristine white Mercedes, the same car she used for showing properties to high-end clients. Her greeting was warm but distracted, her phone constantly buzzing with messages from vendors, relatives, and wedding coordinators. The drive to Scottsdale was filled with rapid-fire updates about last-minute changes, vendor issues, and family members who were arriving throughout the day. Stephanie had been up since 5 a.m. managing crisis after crisis, Mom explained while navigating airport traffic with the ease of someone who had driven these roads for decades. The florist had discovered a problem with the centerpiece orchids. The caterer needed confirmation about dietary restrictions for several guests, and Brad's groomsmen had flight delays that were affecting the rehearsal dinner timeline. Each issue required immediate attention and perfect solutions, because anything less than flawless execution would reflect poorly on Stephanie's professional reputation. Listening to the litany of wedding emergencies, I felt grateful for my decision to maintain boundaries around my involvement. The level of stress and perfectionism driving the event would have been overwhelming if I had agreed to serve as Stephanie's full-time assistant during the final week. Even with limited responsibilities, I could see that the next 3 days would require careful management of my emotional energy and clear focus on my specific role as maid of honor. The house looked exactly as I remembered, its southwestern architecture and desert landscaping creating an oasis of controlled beauty in the midst of Scottsdale's luxury development. Dad's trucks were parked in the circular driveway alongside vehicles belonging to out-of-town relatives, vendors, and wedding party members who were using the house as a staging area for final preparation. Inside, the house buzzed with activity that felt more like a professional event production than family celebration. Stephanie moved through the rooms with a clipboard and headset, directing a small army of assistants, vendors, and family members who were helping execute her vision. She looked beautiful but exhausted, her perfectionist tendencies amplified by the pressure of orchestrating an event that needed to showcase her professional capabilities while celebrating her personal happiness. Brad appeared periodically, offering support and handling logistics with the kind of calm competence that made him valuable in business and apparently in wedding planning as well. His family's wealth and connections had opened doors throughout the planning process, providing access to vendors and venues that might have been difficult to secure otherwise. The combination of his resources and Stephanie's creativity had produced what promised to be a truly spectacular celebration. When Stephanie finally had a moment to greet Kevin and me properly, her exhaustion was evident beneath her professional composure. She hugged me tightly, expressing genuine gratitude that I had taken time off work to be there for her special weekend. Her appreciation felt sincere, and for a moment I glimpsed the sister I remembered from childhood, before family dynamics and competing achievements had complicated our relationship. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private dining room in one of Scottsdale's most exclusive restaurants, a venue that showcased both families' social status and provided an elegant setting for introducing wedding party members and out-of-town guests. Brad's parents had spared no expense, creating an atmosphere of sophisticated celebration that reflected their position in Arizona's business community. During cocktail hour, I found myself navigating conversations with extended family members I hadn't seen in years, many of whom seemed surprised by my presence and curious about my life in Denver. Their questions were polite but revealed assumptions about my circumstances that were both amusing and telling. Several relatives seemed to expect that I had moved back to Arizona by now, or at least that my time in Colorado was a temporary adventure before settling down closer to family. When I explained that Kevin and I were building a life in Denver where my career was thriving and we had established community connections, the responses varied from polite confusion to subtle disapproval. Some family members seemed unable to understand why anyone would choose to live far from family support systems, especially when Dad's business success could potentially provide opportunities in Arizona's growing economy. The assumptions about my professional situation were even more revealing. Multiple relatives asked if I was still doing art, a characterization that minimized my marketing career and suggested they viewed my work as a hobby rather than a legitimate profession. When I corrected these misconceptions and described my role at Creative Solutions, along with the business impact of campaigns I had developed, the responses were polite but clearly skeptical about the significance of my achievement. Brad's family was more diplomatically curious about Kevin's background and our plans for the future. Their questions revealed careful assessment of his potential as a marriage partner and provider, evaluating his family background, career prospects, and financial stability according to criteria that had nothing to do with our actual relationship dynamic. Kevin handled their inquiries with grace, but I could see him processing the transactional nature of how relationships were being evaluated and discussed. The contrast with how Brad was welcomed and celebrated became increasingly obvious throughout the evening. His achievements were discussed with enthusiasm and respect. His family connections were treated as valuable assets, and his future plans were supported unconditionally. The difference in reception wasn't subtle, and it reflected the same patterns that had influenced my decision to build independence away from family expectations and comparison. Stephanie's maid of honor speech, introduction provided an opportunity to observe family dynamics from a different perspective. She spoke about our childhood relationship with warmth and affection, sharing memories that focused on positive moments and sisterly support rather than the competition and comparison that had characterized much of our interaction. Her words were generous and loving, revealing her genuine appreciation for my presence at her wedding despite our complicated history. But even her generous tribute contained subtle elements that reinforced familiar patterns. She described me as the steady, reliable sister who had always been there to support her dreams and ambitions. While intended as praise, the characterization positioned me in a supporting role rather than recognizing my own achievements and goals. The speech was beautiful and heartfelt, but it also reflected the family narrative that cast Stephanie as the dynamic protagonist while I remained the dependable supporting character. The rehearsal dinner concluded with toasts from both fathers, speeches that revealed their hopes and expectations for Stephanie and Brad's future. Dad's remarks focused on business partnership and family legacy, expressing confidence that their marriage would strengthen both families' positions in Arizona's business community. Brad's father echoed similar themes, emphasizing the importance of building wealth and influence that could benefit future generations. Neither speech mentioned love as the primary foundation for marriage, focusing instead on practical considerations about compatibility, shared values, and mutual support for professional ambition. The omission felt telling, reflecting a worldview that prioritized status and financial security over emotional connection and personal fulfillment. Kevin and I exchanged glances during these toasts, both of us recognizing how different our own relationship priorities were from the values being celebrated. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for Stephanie's outdoor ceremony at the Paradise Valley Resort. The venue was spectacular, with views of Camelback Mountain providing a dramatic backdrop for an event that had been planned to showcase Arizona's natural beauty alongside sophisticated luxury. Stephanie had chosen the location partly for its photogenic qualities, knowing that wedding pictures would serve as marketing materials for her event planning business. The bridal suite was a controlled chaos of hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and wedding party members preparing for the ceremony. Stephanie was in her element, managing multiple conversations, while having her hair and makeup perfected by professionals she had carefully selected for their skills and reliability. Her wedding dress was a custom creation that perfectly complemented her figure and the desert setting, elegant without being ostentatious. As maid of honor, my responsibilities included ensuring that bridesmaids were ready on schedule, managing the flow of preparations, and providing emotional support for Stephanie during what should have been a joyful but potentially stressful morning. The role required diplomatic skills and organizational abilities, coordinating between various service providers while maintaining the celebratory atmosphere appropriate for such an important occasion. Stephanie's perfectionist tendencies were amplified by the pressure of orchestrating an event that needed to be flawless both personally and professionally. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, but she continued to worry about potential problems that could arise during the ceremony or reception. Her anxiety was understandable but also exhausting for everyone around her, creating tension that threatened to overshadow the joy of the occasion. When the photographer began taking getting ready pictures, I noticed how naturally Stephanie commanded attention and created beautiful images. She had an instinctive understanding of lighting, angles, and positioning that made every shot look professional and magazine-worthy. Her talent for creating visual perfection was evident not just in event planning but in her ability to present herself and her celebrations in ways that would impress clients and social media followers. The ceremony itself was everything Stephanie had envisioned: elegant, romantic, and visually stunning. She had chosen readings that emphasized partnership and mutual support, music that created emotional resonance without being overly sentimental, and vows that she and Brad had written to reflect their shared values and future goals. The desert setting provided natural beauty that complemented rather than competed with her carefully planned decorative elements. Walking down the aisle ahead of Stephanie, I felt genuinely proud of what she had accomplished both in planning this celebration and in building a successful business at such a young age. Whatever our complicated family dynamics, her achievements were impressive and well-deserved. The wedding was a testament to her creativity, organizational skills, and ability to execute complex events under pressure. The ceremony concluded with enthusiastic applause from guests who had been genuinely moved by the celebration and impressed by its flawless execution. Stephanie and Brad looked happy and radiant, surrounded by family and friends, who were celebrating not just their marriage, but also Stephanie's emergence as a significant talent in Arizona's event planning industry. The cocktail hour provided an opportunity for guests to mingle while the wedding party participated in formal photography sessions. The photographer was one of Arizona's most sought-after wedding professionals, someone Stephanie had booked partly for his artistic reputation and partly for the prestige associated with his client list. Having him document her wedding would provide both beautiful personal memories and valuable professional credibility. During the photo sessions, I observed how effortlessly Stephanie worked with the photographer to create stunning images. She understood instinctively how to position herself and direct other wedding party members to achieve the visual effects they wanted. Her comfort in front of cameras reflected years of practice and natural talent, skills that served her well both personally and in her event coordination business. The reception was held in an adjacent ballroom that Stephanie had transformed into a desert oasis with lighting, flowers, and decorative elements that complemented the natural setting while creating intimate spaces for dining and dancing. The attention to detail was extraordinary, from personalized place cards to carefully curated music that reflected both her and Brad's preferences, while maintaining appropriate energy for different parts of the evening. As guests transitioned from cocktail hour to dinner, I helped coordinate the logistics that would ensure smooth flow throughout the reception. The responsibilities were familiar from my maid of honor duties at other weddings, but Stephanie's perfectionist standards required extra attention to timing and detail management. Every element needed to execute flawlessly to maintain the professional reputation she was building through this showcase event. The catering was provided by one of Arizona's most prestigious firms, a company that specialized in high-end weddings and corporate events. Their reputation for culinary excellence and impeccable service made them expensive, but reliable partners for events where failure wasn't acceptable. Stephanie had worked closely with their event coordinator to design a menu that would impress guests while accommodating various dietary restrictions and preferences. During dinner service, I noticed the seamless coordination between catering staff, venue management, and the various vendors Stephanie had assembled for the reception. The level of professionalism was impressive, reflecting the quality standards that had made her business successful despite her young age. Each vendor understood their role in creating an overall experience that would exceed guest expectations while showcasing Stephanie's capabilities as an event coordinator. The evening's program included toasts from both families, entertainment that Stephanie had carefully selected to appeal to guests ranging from teenagers to grandparents, and dancing that would continue well into the night. Every element had been planned to create memorable experiences for guests while documenting beautifully for the professional photography and videography that would serve as marketing materials for Stephanie's business. Brad's best man speech was particularly well received, combining humor with genuine emotion while avoiding potentially embarrassing stories or inappropriate jokes. His remarks reflected the kind of social sophistication that came from growing up in Arizona's business community where public speaking and relationship management were essential professional skills. The speech successfully entertained guests while reinforcing positive impressions of both Brad and Stephanie. When my turn came to deliver the maid of honor speech, I had prepared remarks that focused on celebrating Stephanie's achievements while sharing memories that illustrated her determination and creativity. I wanted to honor our relationship while avoiding references to family dynamics that might be inappropriate for such a public forum. The speech needed to be personal but not too revealing, supportive but not overly sentimental. My remarks were well received by guests who appreciated hearing about Stephanie's childhood dreams of coordinating beautiful events, and her dedication to turning those dreams into professional success. I shared stories about her elaborate childhood tea parties and her natural talent for organizing celebrations that brought people together. The speech celebrated her accomplishments while positioning this wedding as both personal milestone and professional achievement. As the evening progressed and guests settled into the rhythm of celebration, I began to relax and enjoy the party that Stephanie had created. Despite the complicated family dynamics and the pressure she had placed on herself to achieve perfection, the wedding was genuinely beautiful and joyful. Her vision had been realized through months of careful planning and coordination, resulting in an event that would be remembered fondly by everyone who attended. The dancing portion of the reception showcased Stephanie's talent for reading crowd energy and adjusting entertainment accordingly. She had worked with the DJ to create playlists that would appeal to different age groups and encourage participation from guests who might not typically dance at wedding receptions. Her understanding of group dynamics and celebration psychology was evident in how successfully she had designed an event that brought people together. But it was during the family photographs, scheduled during a brief break in dancing, that the evening took an unexpected turn. Stephanie had arranged for formal portraits with both extended families, images that would become treasured family heirlooms, while also serving as testament to the successful celebration she had orchestrated. The photographer was setting up equipment when Brad's parents approached with several business associates they wanted to introduce to family members. The introductions began routinely, with Brad's father presenting his parents, siblings and key family members to his business partners and their spouses. When they reached Kevin and me, Stephanie stepped forward to handle the introduction with the social grace that had always been her strength. But instead of introducing me as her sister Jessica, a marketing professional from Denver, she said something that stopped conversation completely. "This is just some of the hired help," she announced with a dismissive wave toward Kevin and me, her voice carrying clearly across the small group gathered for photographs. "They're not really part of the family portraits we're taking." The words were delivered with casual confidence, as if she were simply clarifying logistical details,
rather than making a devastating statement about my place in her wedding and our family. The silence that followed was deafening. Brad's business associates looked confused, unsure whether they had misunderstood something or witnessed an uncomfortable family moment. Kevin's face went pale with shock and anger, while I felt heat flood my cheeks with embarrassment and disbelief. Even Brad looked startled by Stephanie's characterization, glancing between his wife and me with obvious confusion. The photographer professional who had undoubtedly witnessed various family dramas during his career attempted to redirect attention back to the technical aspects of portrait setup. But the damage was done, and the small group of witnesses had clearly heard Stephanie dismiss her own sister as hired help rather than family. The comment revealed not just momentary rudeness, but a fundamental disrespect that reduced my presence at her wedding to that of service staff. Mom and Dad, who had been arranging other family members for photographs, missed the exchange entirely.
They continued organizing poses and discussing shot lists with the photographer, unaware that their daughter had just publicly humiliated her sister in front of business associates and wedding guests. Their obliviousness to what had just occurred highlighted how thoroughly they had become accustomed to Stephanie's behavior and my acceptance of secondary treatment. Brad's parents attempted to smooth over the awkward moment with polite conversation about the beautiful ceremony and reception. But their discomfort was obvious. They had witnessed behavior that reflected poorly on Stephanie's character, and raised questions about family dynamics they had no desire to understand or address. Their attempts at diplomatic recovery only emphasized how inappropriate Stephanie's comment had been. Kevin took my arm gently but firmly, his voice carefully controlled as he suggested we needed to check on something related to our hotel arrangements. His protective instinct was activating, and I could see him calculating whether to confront Stephanie immediately or remove me from the situation before my emotions overwhelmed my ability to respond appropriately. His concern for my well-being provided the clarity I needed to make a decision. Without saying anything to Stephanie or attempting to correct her character adoshing, I turned away from the family photograph setup and walked steadily toward the exit. Kevin followed closely, his hand on my back, providing silent support as we navigated through reception guests who were returning to dancing and celebration. The party continued around us, completely unaware that the maid of honor was leaving her sister's wedding in disgrace. We collected our personal items from the bridal suite area and found a quiet corridor where I could process what had just happened without being observed by wedding guests or family members. The shock was beginning to give way to other emotions: anger at Stephanie's cruelty, embarrassment at being publicly dismissed, and deep sadness about what this moment revealed about our relationship and my place in the family structure. Kevin was furious on my behalf, his usual calm demeanor replaced by protective anger that I rarely saw from him. He wanted to return to the reception and demand that Stephanie apologize publicly for her behavior, but I knew that confrontation would only create more drama and potentially ruin her wedding celebration. Despite my hurt and anger, I wasn't willing to destroy her special day, even though she had been willing to humiliate me during it. The decision to leave the wedding immediately felt both impulsive and inevitable. Staying would require pretending that nothing had happened, smiling through the remainder of the reception while carrying the knowledge that my own sister viewed me as disposable help rather than family. The emotional cost of that performance felt too high, especially when I could choose to protect my dignity by removing myself from a situation where I clearly wasn't valued or respected. As we waited for our ride back to the hotel, I called Grandpa Eddie from the resort lobby to explain why I would be leaving Arizona earlier than planned. His response was immediate understanding and support, along with quiet anger about Stephanie's behavior that matched my own feelings. He had witnessed decades of family dynamics and recognized this incident as a particularly cruel example of patterns that had driven my decision to build independence in Denver. The hotel room that night was quiet, except for the sound of my phone buzzing with text messages from family members who had noticed my departure from the reception. Most were confused rather than concerned, asking if I was feeling sick or if there had been some kind of emergency that required leaving early. None of the messages indicated awareness of what Stephanie had said or recognition that her behavior might have motivated my decision to leave. Kevin helped me draft responses that were honest but diplomatic, explaining that I had decided to return to Denver earlier than planned, due to personal reasons. The messages didn't provide details about the incident with Stephanie, but they also didn't offer false excuses or elaborate explanations that would require additional lies or deception. I was learning to protect my own emotional well-being without taking responsibility for managing other people's reactions to my choices. Sleep was difficult that night, my mind replaying Stephanie's words and analyzing every aspect of the incident for clues about her motivations and the family dynamics that had made such cruelty possible. The comment about hired help wasn't spontaneous rudeness but reflected deeper beliefs about my value and place in her life. Her willingness to humiliate me publicly suggested a level of contempt that I had been trying not to acknowledge for years. The morning brought additional perspective along with messages from family members asking about our early departure plans. Mom called to check on my health and express concern about missing the post-wedding brunch that Stephanie had organized for out-of-town guests. Her tone suggested assumption that I had left due to illness or emergency rather than recognition that something problematic might have occurred during the reception. When I explained briefly that Stephanie had made comments that made me uncomfortable enough to leave early, Mom's response was immediate defensiveness of her younger daughter. She suggested that I might have misunderstood something said during a stressful evening, or that wedding pressure might have caused Stephanie to speak carelessly without meaning offense. The possibility that Stephanie's behavior was genuinely inappropriate seemed not to occur to her. The conversation revealed how deeply ingrained the family pattern of excusing Stephanie's behavior had become. Even when presented with clear evidence of hurtful conduct, the immediate response was to find alternative explanations that would absolve her of responsibility rather than acknowledging that she might have acted poorly. My feelings about the incident were treated as potentially unreasonable rather than legitimate responses to genuinely problematic behavior. Dad's call later that morning followed similar patterns, expressing confusion about why I would leave family celebration early over what he characterized as a misunderstanding or miscommunication. His perspective focused on family unity and supporting Stephanie during her special weekend, rather than addressing whether her treatment of me had been appropriate. The suggestion was that I should have overlooked whatever happened in service of maintaining family harmony. These conversations crystallized my understanding of how thoroughly my family had normalized patterns that prioritized Stephanie's comfort and success over basic respect for my feelings and dignity. The incident at the wedding wasn't an aberration but rather an extreme example of dynamics that had influenced my decision to build independence in Denver. My family's response to my departure confirmed that these patterns were unlikely to change regardless of how egregious Stephanie's behavior became. The flight back to Denver felt like escaping from an emotional prison I hadn't fully realized I was still carrying. Kevin held my hand during takeoff, neither of us speaking about what had transpired at the wedding reception. The silence wasn't uncomfortable but rather protective, allowing me space to process the magnitude of what Stephanie had revealed about her true feelings toward me. Her casual dismissal as hired help wasn't just wedding day stress or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was an authentic expression of how she viewed my worth and place in her life. As Arizona's desert landscape disappeared beneath the clouds, I felt something shifting inside me that was deeper than anger or hurt. For years I had maintained hope that our relationship could evolve into something healthier as we both matured into independent adults. I had attributed past conflicts to sibling rivalry and family dynamics that might naturally resolve as we established our own identities and achieved. Stephanie's comment at the wedding shattered those optimistic assumptions, revealing a level of contempt that couldn't be explained away by stress or circumstances. Kevin finally broke the silence as we reached cruising altitude, his voice gentle but firm. "You know, you don't have to go back to pretending that was okay," he said, referring not just to the wedding incident, but to years of accepting treatment that diminished my worth and contribution. His words gave me permission to acknowledge what I had been trying not to see, that my family's love was conditional on my willingness to accept a subordinate role that served their emotional needs, rather than recognizing my intrinsic value. The relief of being back in our Denver apartment was immediate and profound. Our small space with its secondhand furniture and view of the tree-lined street represented authenticity and mutual respect in ways that my family's luxurious home never had. Kevin made tea while I changed out of my wedding attire into comfortable clothes that belonged to my real life rather than the performance I had been maintaining for family approval. The simple domestic routine felt healing after days of emotional manipulation disguised as celebration. That evening I called Grandpa Eddie to process what had happened and seek his perspective on how to move forward. His voice was sad but not surprised when I described Stephanie's behavior and my family's response to my early departure. Misha, he said with the wisdom of someone who had observed these dynamics for decades. Sometimes people show you who they really are, and believing them the first time saves a lot of heartache later. His validation of my experience provided the emotional foundation I needed to make difficult decisions about future family relationships. The days following our return were filled with debriefing conversations with Kevin, long walks through our neighborhood, and gradual processing of what the wedding weekend had revealed about family patterns I had been trying to navigate or change for most of my adult life. The incident with Stephanie wasn't isolated rudeness, but rather the culmination of years of subtle and not-so-subtle messages about my place in the family hierarchy. Her willingness to publicly humiliate me demonstrated a level of disregard that couldn't be attributed to wedding stress or momentary insensitivity. Work provided welcome distraction and reminded me of environments where my contributions were valued and respected. Creative Solutions had several exciting projects launching, including a rebranding campaign for a nonprofit organization expanding throughout Colorado and a marketing strategy for a sustainable fashion startup that was attracting national attention. The professional challenges engaged my creativity and problem-solving abilities in ways that felt meaningful and rewarding, creating stark contrast with family interactions that consistently left me feeling diminished and undervalued. Diana Chen noticed that I seemed more focused and energized than usual upon returning from the wedding trip, commenting on the innovative approaches I was bringing to current projects. When she asked about my family visit, I provided brief positive comments about celebrating my sister's wedding while keeping personal details private. The professional environment allowed me to be appreciated for my actual capabilities, rather than measured against family expectations and comparisons that had nothing to do with my real strengths and achievements. Kevin and I spent evening hours discussing our future plans with new clarity about priorities and values that would guide our decisions. The wedding weekend had reinforced our commitment to building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation or social expectation. We began seriously planning our own future together, including conversations about marriage that reflected our shared understanding of partnership as collaboration between equals rather than performance for family approval. 3 days after returning to Denver, my phone rang with a call from an unknown Arizona number. My first instinct was to ignore it, assuming another family member was attempting to convince me to apologize to Stephanie or minimize what had happened at the wedding. But something made me answer, perhaps curiosity about who might be calling or lingering concern about Grandpa Eddie's health. The voice on the other end was professional but warm, introducing himself as Marcus Rodriguez from Elegance Catering, the company that had provided food service for Stephanie's wedding reception. Marcus explained that he had been working the reception and had witnessed the incident where Stephanie referred to me as hired help rather than family. As someone who had spent years observing family dynamics at high-end events, he recognized both the cruelty of her comment and the grace with which I had handled the situation. His call wasn't motivated by sympathy alone but by professional interest in my background and capabilities that he had observed during the wedding weekend. During our conversation, Marcus revealed that he had been quietly inquiring about my professional background and had discovered information about Creative Solutions in the marketing campaigns I had developed for various Colorado businesses. His research had impressed him enough to prompt an unusual business proposition that could potentially transform both of our companies. Elegance Catering was planning to expand into Colorado and other Western markets, and they needed marketing expertise that combined understanding of high-end clientele with innovative digital strategy. The irony wasn't lost on either of us that Stephanie's attempt to diminish me as hired help had actually connected me with a business opportunity that could significantly advance my career. Marcus explained that Elegance Catering's expansion plans required sophisticated marketing approaches that could establish their brand in competitive markets, while maintaining the reputation for excellence that had made them successful in Arizona. My experience with luxury brands and event-related businesses made me an ideal candidate for developing their expansion strategy. Marcus's offer included not just consulting fees that exceeded my current salary but also equity participation in the Colorado expansion that could provide long-term financial benefits far beyond anything I could achieve as an employee at Creative Solutions. The partnership would allow me to maintain my current client relationships while taking on a leadership role in developing marketing strategies for one of the Southwest's most prestigious catering companies. The professional growth potential was exactly what I had been hoping to achieve, arriving through circumstances I never could have anticipated. More importantly, Marcus's recognition of my capabilities and his willingness to build a business partnership, based on my professional achievements, represented validation that had nothing to do with family approval or comparison to Stephanie's accomplishments. His offer was based entirely on objective assessment of my skills and potential contributions to his business goals. The contrast with family dynamics that consistently undervalued my achievements couldn't have been more stark or meaningful. Kevin's excitement about the opportunity matched my own, but he also helped me consider practical implications and potential challenges of such a significant career transition. We spent hours analyzing financial projections, discussing timeline requirements, and evaluating how the partnership might affect our personal plans and relationship goals. His support provided the confidence I needed to seriously consider accepting an offer that would fundamentally change my professional trajectory. Diana Chen's response to my consulting opportunity was immediately supportive, reflecting the kind of mentorship that prioritized my growth over company convenience. She recognized that the partnership with Elegance Catering represented advancement that Creative Solutions couldn't provide, and she offered to help structure a transition that would allow me to complete current projects while beginning work on the expansion strategy. Her generosity reinforced my understanding of what healthy professional relationships looked like when they were based on mutual respect and genuine concern for individual development. The next few weeks were intensive with planning and preparation for the new partnership. Marcus flew to Denver to meet with Kevin and me, providing detailed information about Elegance Catering's business model, client base, and expansion goals. His vision for growing the company was ambitious but well-researched, based on market analysis that identified significant opportunities in Colorado's luxury event industry. The business plan was sophisticated and realistic, offering genuine potential for success rather than optimistic speculation. Working with Marcus revealed professional compatibility that made the partnership feel natural and productive. His experience in high-end catering complemented my marketing expertise, creating collaboration that enhanced both of our capabilities. We shared similar values about quality, client service, and business integrity that provided foundation for building a company culture focused on excellence, rather than just profit maximization. The working relationship felt like the professional equivalent of what Kevin and I had built personally, partnership between equals working toward shared goals. The formal launch of our Colorado expansion began 6 months after Stephanie's wedding, with marketing campaigns that showcased Elegance Catering's capabilities while establishing brand recognition in Denver's competitive luxury event market. The initial client responses exceeded our projections, with bookings from high-profile clients who appreciated the company's reputation and innovative approach to event catering. The success validated our business strategy while providing financial returns that quickly established the partnership as profitable and sustainable. My family's response to news about the business partnership revealed their continued inability to recognize my achievements as separate from their own expectations and comparison. When I called to share information about the company launch and early success, Mom's immediate reaction was concern about whether I was making responsible financial decisions, rather than celebration of my professional advancement. Her questions focused on risk management and practical considerations, while completely missing the significance of what I had accomplished through my own capabilities and effort. Dad's response reflected his construction industry perspective, treating my marketing partnership as somehow less substantial than businesses that produced tangible products or services. His comments suggested that he viewed catering and event planning as frivolous industries, compared to construction and real estate, dismissing the business acumen required to succeed in luxury service market. The lack of recognition for what I had achieved professionally echoed the same patterns that had influenced my decision to build independence away from family approval. Stephanie's reaction was more complex,
combining congratulations with subtle attempts to position herself as somehow responsible for my opportunity. She claimed credit for introducing me to Marcus through her wedding, as if her cruel comment had been strategic networking rather than hurtful dismissal. Her reframing of the incident revealed her continued inability to acknowledge her behavior or recognize that my success had nothing to do with her contributions or approval. The first year of the Colorado expansion was demanding but rewarding, requiring extensive travel between Denver and Arizona while building client relationships and establishing operational systems. Marcus and I developed working rhythms that maximized our individual strengths while maintaining clear communication about business goals and strategic decisions. The partnership proved to be everything we had hoped professionally while also becoming the foundation for lasting friendship, based on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. Kevin's support throughout the business development process was unwavering, from helping with market research during early planning stages to managing household responsibilities when travel requirements became intensive. His encouragement never wavered, even when long hours and business stress temporarily reduced time available for personal activities and relationship focus. His understanding of what the partnership meant for my long-term goals made him willing to sacrifice short-term convenience for my professional advancement. The financial success of the business expansion allowed Kevin and me to purchase our first home, a charming craftsman-style house in Denver's Highlands neighborhood that provided space for both personal comfort and home office requirements. The house represented stability and achievement that we had earned through our own efforts rather than family assistance or approval. Having a space that was entirely ours, decorated according to our preferences and filled with furniture we had chosen together, felt like the ultimate expression of the independent life we had built. Our engagement announcement was made quietly to close friends and supportive family members, with celebration focused on people who had encouraged our relationship rather than those who had questioned Kevin's suitability or my decision to prioritize love over social expectation. Grandpa Eddie's joy about our engagement provided all the family validation I needed, his blessing representing approval from the only family member whose opinion truly mattered to my happiness and sense of worth. The wedding planning process reflected our shared values about authenticity over performance, intimacy over spectacle, and celebration with people who genuinely supported our relationship rather than attendance motivated by social obligation. We chose a small ceremony in Colorado's Rocky Mountains, with reception dinner at a restaurant that had been our favorite throughout college and early career years. The celebration would honor our relationship and commitment while avoiding the stress and expense of elaborate production. Family responses to our wedding plans revealed the ongoing differences in values and priorities that had influenced my decision to build independence in Denver. Mom's immediate concern was about the small guest list and informal venue, questioning whether the celebration would adequately reflect our family's social status and business connection. Her suggestion that we consider a larger Arizona reception to accommodate extended family and business associates missed the point entirely about what kind of celebration would be meaningful for Kevin and me. Stephanie's offer to coordinate our wedding planning was declined politely but firmly, with explanation that we preferred to handle arrangements ourselves rather than creating elaborate celebration that would require professional event coordination. Her disappointment was obvious, reflecting both genuine desire to contribute to my happiness and continued inability to understand that not everyone shared her values about how important occasions should be celebrated and presented. The contrast between our wedding planning approach and Stephanie's elaborate celebration highlighted the fundamental differences in how we understood success, relationships, and personal fulfillment. Where she had prioritized visual impact and professional networking opportunities, Kevin and I focused on emotional authenticity and celebration with people who had supported our growth as individuals and as a couple. Our smaller budget and simpler approach reflected values that prioritized substance over appearance. 2 years after Stephanie's wedding, our business partnership had established Elegance Catering as one of Colorado's premier luxury event companies, with expansion into New Mexico and Utah already in planning stage. The success had exceeded even our optimistic projections, providing financial security and professional recognition that validated our decision to take entrepreneurial risks rather than accepting traditional employment limitations. My role as marketing director and equity partner represented achievement that surpassed anything I had imagined when I first moved to Denver. The professional recognition included features in industry publications, speaking opportunities at marketing conferences, and consulting requests from other companies seeking to replicate our expansion strategy. The visibility established my reputation as an expert in luxury brand development and market expansion, credentials that opened doors for future opportunities while providing current satisfaction about meaningful work that utilized my capabilities fully. Kevin's parallel success in his financial counseling career meant that we were both contributing to household finances and personal goals from positions of professional strength and individual achievement. Our relationship had grown stronger through supporting each other's ambitions while maintaining the emotional connection and shared values that had attracted us initially. The partnership we had built personally provided foundation for navigating business challenges and celebrating professional successes together. Family relationships had evolved into polite but distant connections that acknowledged our mutual care while respecting the boundaries necessary for my emotional health and continued growth. Regular calls with Grandpa Eddie maintained the one family relationship that consistently provided encouragement and genuine interest in my happiness. Occasional contact with Mom and Dad focused on practical matters and general updates, while avoiding topics that historically had created conflict or comparison. Stephanie and I had reached an unspoken understanding that our relationship would remain cordial but superficial, with interaction limited to major family events and holiday communication. Her continued success in Arizona's event planning industry was acknowledged and respected, while my achievements in Colorado remained largely separate from family recognition or involvement. The parallel paths allowed us both to thrive professionally while avoiding direct competition or comparison that had historically created tension. The distance had provided perspective on family dynamics that had shaped both of our development in ways that were sometimes helpful and sometimes limited. Stephanie's confidence and social skills had been enhanced by family support and encouragement, while my independence and resilience had been strengthened by learning to succeed without consistent validation or approval. Both outcomes reflected adaptation to family systems that had influenced our respective paths toward adulthood and professional achievement. Marcus's friendship had become one of the most valued relationships in my life, built on professional collaboration that had evolved into personal connection based on shared experiences and mutual respect. His perspective as someone who had witnessed the wedding incident but had chosen to focus on my capabilities rather than my family's treatment provided ongoing reminder that my worth wasn't determined by others' recognition or approval. The business success had also created opportunities for giving back to communities that had supported my growth and development. Elegance Catering's partnership with Denver nonprofit organizations provided catering services for fundraising events, while our marketing expertise helped these organizations increase their visibility and donor engagement. The ability to contribute skills and resources to causes that mattered felt like meaningful expression of gratitude for opportunities I had received. Kevin's proposal came during a weekend camping trip in Rocky Mountain National Park, in a setting that reflected our shared love of Colorado's natural beauty and our preference for meaningful experiences over elaborate gestures. The ring was beautiful but modest, chosen for personal significance rather than social impression. His proposal focused on the life we had built together and his excitement about continuing to grow and achieve alongside someone who challenged and supported him equally. Our wedding ceremony was everything we had envisioned: intimate, authentic, and focused on commitment rather than performance. Grandpa Eddie served as my only family representative, his presence providing all the familial support and blessing I needed for the occasion.
Kevin's family welcomed me warmly, treating our marriage as celebration of love and partnership rather than evaluation of social compatibility or business advantage. The reception dinner included toasts from friends who had supported our relationship throughout its development, colleagues who had witnessed our professional growth, and family members who had consistently encouraged our individual achievements and shared goals. The evening felt like celebration of authenticity and mutual respect, rather than performance for people whose approval was conditional on meeting their expectations, rather than honoring our actual values and priorities. Looking back on the journey from Stephanie's wedding to my own celebration, the transformation in my understanding of family, success, and personal worth felt profound and permanent. The woman who had left her sister's reception in humiliation had evolved into someone who could create her own definitions of achievement and happiness without requiring validation from people who consistently demonstrated inability to recognize her value. The business partnership that had emerged from Stephanie's cruel comment had provided not just financial success, but also proof that authentic recognition came from people who appreciated actual capabilities rather than family members who had predetermined narratives about individual worth and potential. Marcus's willingness to build a company based on my professional strengths had created opportunities that exceeded anything I could have achieved while trying to earn approval from people who were fundamentally unable to see my contributions clearly. The contrast between the wedding, where I had been dismissed as hired help, and the business success that had emerged from that humiliation felt like the universe providing justice in ways that no individual revenge could have accomplished. Stephanie's attempt to diminish me had actually connected me with opportunities that established independence and achievement beyond anything she had imagined possible for her older sister. But the most important transformation was internal, the development of self-worth that didn't require external validation, and success that was measured by personal fulfillment rather than comparison to others' achievement. The journey had taught me that authentic family relationships were built on mutual respect and unconditional support, while toxic dynamics persisted regardless of individual accomplishments or attempts to earn approval through performance. Kevin's love and partnership had provided the emotional foundation for all other growth, demonstrating daily what healthy relationships looked like when they were based on equality and genuine appreciation for individual strength. His consistent support had created space for professional risk-taking and personal development that might have been impossible without someone who believed in my capabilities even when I struggled with self-doubt. The life we had built in Colorado represented everything I had hoped to achieve when I first left Arizona for college: professional fulfillment, authentic relationships, financial independence, and personal happiness that wasn't dependent on meeting others' expectations or earning approval through compliance with their values. The journey had required courage, persistence, and willingness to prioritize my own growth over family comfort, but the results had validated every difficult decision along the way. 3 years after my own wedding, the call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing marketing proposals for Elegance Catering's expansion into the Pacific Northwest. Mom's voice was strained in a way I hadn't heard since Dad's minor heart attack 2 years earlier, immediately alerting me that this wasn't a routine family update. She explained that Martinez Construction was facing serious financial difficulties due to a series of problematic contracts and economic downturns affecting luxury home construction throughout Arizona. The details emerged slowly during our conversation, painting a picture of business challenges that had been developing for months without family acknowledgement or discussion. Several major clients had defaulted on payments for completed projects, leaving Dad's company carrying significant debt for materials and subcontractor costs that couldn't be recovered. Additionally, new construction permits had declined dramatically as interest rates increased and luxury home buyers postponed major purchases, reducing future revenue projections to unsustainable levels. Mom's real estate business was experiencing parallel difficulties, with high-end property sales dropping to levels not seen since the 2000s. Her client base of affluent buyers had largely withdrawn from the market, either unable to secure financing for luxury purchases or unwilling to make major investments during economic uncertainty. The combination of reduced commissions and ongoing business expenses had created cash flow problems that were threatening her ability to maintain the professional image essential for attracting premium clients. But the most significant revelation was about Stephanie's event planning business, which had been struggling far more than anyone in the family had acknowledged or perhaps even understood. The luxury wedding market that had supported her early success had contracted dramatically as couples postponed celebrations or chose smaller, less expensive options that didn't require professional coordination. Her client base had evaporated almost overnight, leaving her with substantial overhead costs for office space, equipment, and marketing commitments that were no longer generating corresponding revenue. The financial pressure had apparently been building for over a year, during which time Stephanie had been borrowing money from mom and dad to maintain business operations and personal expenses. What had begun as temporary assistance during a difficult period had evolved into ongoing financial dependency that was now threatening the entire family's economic stability. The loans had been made quietly, without discussion of repayment terms or realistic assessment of whether Stephanie's business model remained viable. Mom's request was both heartbreaking and infuriating in its presumption. She wanted to know if I would consider providing financial assistance to help stabilize the family's various business challenges, specifically asking whether Elegance Catering might be able to offer consulting services or partnership opportunities that could help restart Stephanie's event planning career. The suggestion revealed how little my family understood about business ethics, professional boundaries, or the irony of asking me to rescue the sister who had publicly dismissed me as hired help. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Mom alternately expressing genuine worry about family financial security and making increasingly desperate suggestions about how my business success might be leveraged to solve problems that had been created through poor decision-making and unrealistic expectations. Her tone shifted between maternal concern and subtle manipulation, appealing to family loyalty while avoiding acknowledgement of how I had been treated during previous interactions with Stephanie and other family members. Kevin found me sitting in our home office after the call, staring out the window at the garden we had cultivated over the past few years. His immediate concern was for my emotional well-being rather than curiosity about family drama, reflecting the kind of supportive partnership that had sustained me through previous challenges. When I explained the situation, his response was characteristically thoughtful, focusing on helping me process the complex emotions the conversation had generated, rather than offering immediate advice about how to respond. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on either of us. The family that had consistently minimized my achievements and dismissed my capabilities was now turning to me for rescue from financial problems they had created through overextension and poor business judgment. The daughter, who had been characterized as hired help, was being asked to provide professional expertise and financial resources to save businesses that had been failing due to lack of realistic planning and market awareness. Marcus's reaction when I shared the family situation was immediate concern about potential impact on our business relationship and professional reputation. His experience in the luxury service industry had taught him to be extremely cautious about mixing personal relationships with business decisions, particularly when family dynamics were involved. He listened carefully to my description of the request before expressing serious reservations about any involvement that could compromise Elegance Catering's professional standards or financial stability. Our discussion about the ethical implications was extensive and sobering. Any assistance provided to Stephanie's business would need to meet the same professional standards we applied to all vendor relationships and partnership decisions. Personal family history couldn't influence business choices that affected our employees, clients, and investors who had trusted us to make sound professional judgment. The success we had built was based on objective assessment of opportunities and risks, rather than emotional considerations that might compromise business integrity. More importantly, Marcus reminded me of observations he had made during Stephanie's wedding about her professional approach and interpersonal skills. While her event coordination capabilities were impressive in terms of visual execution and logistical management, her treatment of service providers and family members had revealed character issues that would make her problematic as a business partner. Professional success required not just technical competence, but also emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills that supported long-term client relationships and vendor partnerships. The conversation with Marcus helped clarify my thinking about appropriate responses to family requests that attempted to blur boundaries between personal relationships and professional responsibility. While I felt genuine sympathy for the financial stress my family was experiencing, their problems had been created through business decisions and spending patterns that reflected values fundamentally different from those that had guided my own career development and financial management. Dad's call that evening provided additional details about the construction company's difficulties, while also revealing his continued inability to understand why I might be reluctant to provide assistance. His approach was typically direct, outlining the financial challenges as if they were external circumstances, rather than consequences of business choices and risk management failures. He seemed genuinely confused by my questions about why the family hadn't sought professional financial counseling or considered restructuring business operations before requesting help from relatives. The discussion revealed how thoroughly my parents had become accustomed to solving problems through family resources, rather than addressing underlying issues that had created difficulty. Stephanie's financial dependency had been enabled for months without anyone questioning whether her business model was sustainable or whether continued support was actually helping her develop independence and professional competence. The pattern of rescuing rather than requiring accountability had created moral hazard that made future problems more likely rather than less probable. When Dad suggested that family loyalty required setting aside past disagreements to help during crisis situations, I found myself articulating boundaries that I hadn't fully recognized until that moment. Family relationships, I explained, needed to be based on mutual respect and genuine care for individual well-being, rather than one-sided sacrifice from some members to support others who had made poor choices. Healthy families provided emotional support and encouragement, while also maintaining accountability and realistic expectations about personal responsibility. The conversation became increasingly tense as Dad realized that I wasn't going to provide the immediate financial assistance he had expected. His frustration reflected years of assumption that my resources and capabilities were available for family use whenever needed, regardless of how I had been treated or whether my own interests and priorities were considered. The entitlement was both shocking and sadly predictable given the family dynamics that had motivated my decision to build independence in Denver. Stephanie's direct call came 2 days later, her approach shifting between apology for past behavior and increasingly desperate pleas for business assistance that could help restart her career. The apology was clearly strategic rather than genuine, focusing on misunderstandings and hurt feelings rather than acknowledgement of the cruelty and disrespect she had demonstrated. Her primary interest was securing help that could solve her immediate financial problems, rather than addressing the relationship damage that had been created through years of dismissive treatment. Her description of business challenges revealed poor financial management and unrealistic expectations that had contributed significantly to her current difficulty. The luxury event market had always been cyclical and vulnerable to economic downturns, but Stephanie had apparently never developed contingency plans or diversified revenue streams that could sustain operations during challenging periods. Her business model had been based on maintaining high-end lifestyle and premium pricing without building financial reserves or operational flexibility needed for long-term survival. When I asked about efforts she had made to adapt her business approach to current market conditions, her responses revealed limited understanding of basic business principles and unwillingness to consider adjustments that might require personal sacrifice or lifestyle change. She seemed to expect that external assistance would allow her to maintain current operations without fundamental changes to spending patterns or professional approaches that were no longer viable in the changed economic environment. The conversation concluded with Stephanie becoming increasingly hostile as she realized that I wasn't going to provide the rescue she had anticipated. Her anger revealed the same sense of entitlement that had characterized her treatment of me throughout our relationship, along with continued inability to recognize that other people had legitimate interests and priorities that might not align with her immediate needs. The call ended with accusations that my refusal demonstrated selfishness and lack of family loyalty, completely ignoring the irony of such criticisms from someone who had publicly humiliated me at her own wedding. Kevin's support during this period was unwavering, helping me process the complex emotions generated by family crisis while maintaining perspective about appropriate boundaries and professional responsibility. His experience with financial counseling had provided insight into family dynamics that often complicated economic problems, particularly when enabling patterns prevented individuals from developing realistic approaches to money management and business operation. Our discussions about the situation helped me recognize patterns that extended far beyond current financial difficulty. My family's approach to problem solving had consistently involved emotional manipulation and exploitation of guilt, rather than honest assessment of circumstances and realistic planning for solutions. The current crisis was more severe than previous situations,
but the underlying dynamics were familiar and unchanged. Marcus and I made the decision to offer general business consulting services to any family members who were interested, provided they were willing to pay standard professional fees and commit to implementing recommendations that emerged from objective analysis of their situation. The offer was genuine but structured to maintain professional boundaries while avoiding the emotional manipulation and financial exploitation that family relationships sometimes enable. The response to our professional consulting offer revealed everything I needed to know about my family's actual commitment to addressing their problems versus their interest in obtaining free assistance from relatives. None of them were willing to pay consulting fees that would establish appropriate business relationships, nor were they interested in implementing changes that might require personal sacrifice or significant adjustments to current lifestyles and expectations. Dad's reaction was particularly telling, expressing offense that I would charge family members for business advice, while completely missing the point about professional boundaries and the importance of maintaining arm's-length relationships when providing services that required objective assessment and honest feedback. His expectation that family relationships automatically provided access to free professional services revealed the same entitlement that had characterized many of our interactions throughout my adult life. Mom's disappointment was more emotional but equally revealing about expectations that had never been realistic or fair. Her assumption that my success created obligations to solve other family members' problems reflected the same dynamic that had made Stephanie the golden child, whose needs consistently took priority over everyone else's interests and well-being. The pattern was so ingrained that challenging it seemed foreign and selfish rather than healthy boundary setting. Stephanie's response was the most hostile, including accusations that I was abandoning family during their greatest time of need and suggestions that my business success had made me arrogant and uncaring. Her inability to recognize the irony of such criticisms from someone who had dismissed me as hired help demonstrated continued blindness to her own behavior and its impact on family relationships. The situation provided clarity about family dynamics that I had been trying to understand and navigate for most of my adult life. My family's love and support were conditional on my willingness to subordinate my own interests to their needs and expectations, while their respect and recognition were withheld unless my achievements served their purposes or enhanced their status. The relationship had always been transactional rather than genuinely supportive, with my value measured by my utility rather than my intrinsic worth as a person. Grandpa Eddie's perspective on the family crisis was characteristically wise and honest. During our weekly phone call, he acknowledged the real financial stress everyone was experiencing while also expressing concern about the patterns of dependency and poor decision-making that had contributed to current problems. His view was that genuine help required accountability and realistic assessment of what changes were needed, rather than temporary assistance that enabled continued poor choices. His observation that family relationships should be based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than exploitation and manipulation validated my decision to maintain professional boundaries while offering appropriate assistance through legitimate business channels. Grandpa Eddie had watched these dynamics develop over decades and recognized that my approach was the only one likely to promote actual healing and healthy relationships rather than continued dysfunction. The months following the family financial crisis provided opportunity to observe how different members responded to their challenges and what approaches they chose for addressing problems that required fundamental changes rather than external rescue. The outcomes revealed character and values in ways that previous interactions had only suggested, clarifying which relationships were worth preserving and which needed to be limited to protect my own well-being and continued growth. Dad eventually sought professional financial counseling and began the difficult process of restructuring Martinez Construction to match current market realities rather than past success levels. The changes required significant lifestyle adjustments and acknowledgement of business mistakes that had been difficult for his pride to accept. But his willingness to take responsibility and make necessary changes demonstrated capacity for growth that provided foundation for rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. Mom's adjustment was more challenging, involving both business restructuring and recognition that her spending patterns had been unsustainable even during prosperous periods. Her real estate career required reinvention to focus on market segments that remained viable during economic uncertainty, along with personal changes that aligned expenses with reduced income levels. The process was difficult but ultimately successful, teaching her lessons about financial management that enhanced both her business skills and personal resilience. Stephanie's response was the most troubling, involving continued denial about the severity of her situation and persistent attempts to find external solutions rather than making changes that addressed underlying problems. Her approach remained focused on finding someone to rescue her rather than developing capabilities and approaches that could create sustainable success. The pattern suggested that she had never really learned to solve problems independently, having always relied on family support and natural advantages that were no longer sufficient. The contrast between how family members handled crisis revealed fundamental differences in character and values that helped explain decades of relationship dynamics. Those who were willing to acknowledge mistakes, make difficult changes, and take responsibility for solutions were capable of growth that could support healthier relationships. Those who remained focused on external rescue and blame for circumstances beyond their control demonstrated patterns that were unlikely to change regardless of assistance or intervention. My own response to the family crisis had provided opportunity to practice boundary-setting skills and professional judgment in high-stress situations involving people I cared about but who had historically been manipulative and disrespectful. The experience confirmed that healthy relationships required mutual respect and accountability rather than one-sided sacrifice and enabling of poor choices. The business success that Marcus and I continued to build provided not just financial security, but also professional fulfillment that validated choices I had made about priorities and value. Elegance Catering's expansion into new markets was exceeding projections while maintaining quality standards and employee satisfaction that reflected our commitment to sustainable growth rather than rapid expansion that might compromise core values. Kevin's parallel career advancement had established him as one of Denver's most respected financial counselors, with expertise particularly valued by clients navigating major life transitions and economic uncertainty. His success was built on the same principles of honesty, competence, and genuine care for client well-being that characterized our personal relationship. The alignment between our professional values and personal partnership created coherence that enhanced both aspects of our lives. Our marriage had deepened through navigating challenges that tested our communication skills, mutual support, and shared commitment to growth and authenticity.
The family crisis had provided opportunity to practice partnership skills in high-stress situations, demonstrating that our relationship could handle external pressure while maintaining internal stability and mutual respect. The home we had created in Colorado represented everything I had hoped to achieve when I first left Arizona for college: professional fulfillment, authentic relationships, financial independence, and personal happiness that wasn't dependent on meeting others' expectations or earning approval through compliance with values that didn't reflect my own priorities. The life we had built was modest by some standards but rich in elements that contributed to genuine satisfaction and sustainable well-being. Looking back on the journey from Stephanie's wedding to current circumstances, the transformation felt both dramatic and natural, representing growth that had been developing gradually through years of choices that prioritized authenticity over approval and health over harmony. The woman who had left her sister's reception in humiliation had evolved into someone capable of maintaining appropriate boundaries while offering genuine assistance based on professional standards rather than emotional manipulation. The business partnership that had emerged from Marcus witnessed Stephanie's cruel comment had provided not just career advancement, but also proof that recognition and opportunity often came from unexpected sources when behavior and capabilities were observed by people capable of objective assessment. The success we had built together validated approaches to business and relationships that prioritized competence, integrity, and mutual respect over status, appearance, and social connection. The contrast between family relationships based on conditional approval and partnerships built on mutual respect had taught me to recognize the difference between genuine support and manipulative exploitation. Healthy relationships enhanced individual growth and contributed to shared goals, while toxic dynamics demanded sacrifice of personal well-being to maintain others' comfort and avoid accountability for their choices. 5 years after Stephanie's wedding, our annual holiday card featured photos from our latest business expansion announcement and personal milestones that reflected continued growth and achievement. The image we presented was authentic rather than curated, showing genuine happiness and success that had been earned through choices that aligned with our values, rather than performance designed to impress others or gain approval from people whose recognition was conditional on meeting their expectations. The family relationships that remained were based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and manipulation. Grandpa Eddie's continued presence in our lives provided connection to positive family history, while Dad's gradual recognition of my achievements and independence had created foundation for rebuilding relationship on healthier terms. Mom's sporadic contact was polite but distant, reflecting her continued discomfort with my independence and success that hadn't required her approval or assistance. Stephanie and I had reached an understanding that our relationship would remain minimal and cordial, acknowledging shared family history, while avoiding interactions that had historically been problematic for both of us. Her continued struggles with business development and personal relationships were unfortunate, but not surprising given her unwillingness to address character issues and interpersonal patterns that had contributed to previous difficulty. The life Kevin and I had built represented everything we had hoped to achieve when we first began planning our future together: professional success that utilized our capabilities fully, personal relationships that enhanced rather than limited individual growth, financial security that provided choices and opportunities, and community connections that reflected our values and contributed to shared well-being. The journey had taught me that authentic success was measured by alignment between values and choices, rather than external recognition or comparison to others' achievement. The happiness we had created was sustainable because it was based on genuine compatibility and mutual support rather than performance and accommodation designed to maintain relationships that required sacrifice of individual authenticity. Marcus's friendship had become one of the most treasured relationships in our lives, built on professional collaboration that had evolved into personal connection based on shared experiences and values. His decision to reach out after witnessing family dysfunction had created opportunities that exceeded anything I could have imagined, while also providing ongoing reminder that worth was recognized by people capable of objective assessment, rather than those whose judgment was clouded by personal history and emotional investment. The business we had built together continued to grow and evolve, creating employment opportunities for dozens of people while providing exceptional service to clients who appreciated quality and professionalism. The success was gratifying not just financially but also professionally, demonstrating that approaches based on competence and integrity could compete successfully against businesses that prioritized cost reduction and profit maximization over employee satisfaction and client relationships. Kevin's proposal for our 5th anniversary was characteristically thoughtful and personal, suggesting we use the milestone to evaluate our progress toward long-term goals while celebrating achievements that had exceeded our early expectations. The conversation took place during a weekend camping trip in Rocky Mountain National Park, surrounded by natural beauty that had provided backdrop for many important discussions throughout our relationship. Our assessment of the past 5 years revealed extraordinary personal and professional growth that had been possible because we had created partnership based on mutual support and shared commitment to authenticity. The challenges we had navigated together had strengthened rather than weakened our relationship, demonstrating resilience and compatibility that provided confidence about future goals and continued growth. The decision to expand our family through adoption was made after extensive discussion about values we wanted to share with children and environments that would support their development into competent, capable, authentic individuals. Our experience with family dysfunction had taught us the importance of unconditional support, honest communication, and recognition of individual worth that wasn't dependent on meeting others' expectations or competing for approval. The adoption process provided opportunity to articulate values and priorities that had been developing throughout our relationship, while also demonstrating to social workers and adoption professionals the stability and commitment that characterized our partnership. The extensive evaluation was thorough but ultimately affirming, confirming that we had created home environment capable of providing security and support that children needed for healthy development. The call informing us about our daughter came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 6 years after Mom's phone call about family financial crisis, providing poetic symmetry about how different types of family relationships could develop. The baby girl who would become Elena Martinez Thompson was born healthy and beautiful, requiring immediate placement with adoptive family due to circumstances that made biological family care impossible. Meeting Elena for the first time was transformative in ways that exceeded even our highest expectations about parenthood. Her immediate trust and responsiveness created a bond that felt both instant and deep, establishing emotional connection that would influence every aspect of our lives and relationship. The responsibility of caring for someone completely dependent on our love and competence was simultaneously overwhelming and natural, activating protective instincts and commitment that enhanced rather than competed with our partnership. The experience of becoming parents while maintaining successful careers and authentic relationship provided perspective on family dynamics that had shaped both Kevin's and my own development. We were determined to create home environment based on unconditional love, honest communication, and support for Elena's individual growth, rather than expectations that she meet predetermined criteria for approval or recognition. The contrast between the family I had grown up in and the family Kevin and I were creating highlighted lessons learned through years of navigating dysfunction and building health. Elena would be loved for who she was rather than what she accomplished, supported in developing her authentic self rather than performance designed to earn approval, and encouraged to make choices based on her own values rather than others' expectations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.